I think this topic is going to be important because of if you have that understanding, now you get to actually make a choice in what you put in your body or how you treat your body going forward, knowing the kind of the devastation that parasites have. And it's and like you said, there's a lot of layers to it. You know, I want to touch on as much as we possibly can, but I don't want to take up too much of your time and everyone else's time too. So we'll try to get into everything like kind of like in a linear fashion. So I say we start now. If you're ready to start now.
Yeah, I'm good to go, man.
Okay, cool. So I think to start things off, let's just start off with the basic idea of what a parasite is. You know, can you give us a definition of what a parasite is in itself?
Well, I guess like the etymology of the word is the quickest way into the discussion, I guess, is like something that sits beside of or whatever, or eats from the table of, something that's eating from, you know, beside you, you know. So, I mean, again, you could look at it too, breaking it down even more in different ways, like parallel sight, something that has parallel vision, something that's looking through you, that's sharing your vision. Yeah, just something that's parallel to you, within you, something that you're sharing your body with.
We've seen movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We've seen The Invasion. We've seen The Host. And when it comes
Venom.
to parasites, right, like it's a being in of itself. It is its own like separate being, I guess we could say, correct? Like it's not you, it's something else.
Yeah, yeah, it's its own thing. It's crazy, man. It's like again, it's like it's levels to it. You know, you got fully grown, fully manifested adult parasites. You know, and then you have like the little underling parasites that have, you know, maybe not fully blossomed, and they're like just kind of like grifters in a sense. They're not like the fucking queen of the nest that knows itself and knows that it's a parasite and knows like it's, you know, what its function is. Whereas like you kind of look at it from an external way, like you can see other people that they don't really know that they're parasites. You know, they don't. A lot of people don't realize it. Some people I think realize it at a subconscious level, or maybe what we call propaganda. You know, when they say like humans are, you know, the scourge of the earth and they're parasites and everything like that. There's a lot of people that I've met that kind of have it in their conscious mind that humans are a parasite, and then they're just kind of accepting of it because the propaganda tells them that, and in a sense, they're not really wrong. You know, it's not this case for everyone, but I feel like since when it comes to a lot of people, they don't really know. You know, the host usually doesn't know the depths of how invaded they are because the parasite's keeping them in that place, keeping them in the euphoria, keeping them, you know, just blocking the realization that, you know, that they're a host, and they think that the thoughts that they're thinking are their thoughts. So it's kind of like the same thing with the parasites within you. You know, like you have different levels of parasites. Some parasites are like grifters that come through maybe when, like, say if you have somebody that dies in your family and your energy, you're just giving off a mass amount of sorrowful energy, then, you know, a parasite can just grift through, maybe, you know, leech on you, maybe eat you up for a week or something, and you drink and smoke for a week or something, and you get back to who you are. But then, you know, some people never get back to who they are, and then it's just a more fully formed parasite, which is basically a more embedded thought. And the parasite is kind of just like the physical expression of the thought, some parasitic thought.
So I guess it's probably safe to say that a parasitic thought is not, it's not your thought. It's not the original thought. It's something outside of you. But in this case, I guess we're saying it's inside of you. So trying to make it like Parasite for dummies in a way they can understand. You're being occupied internally by, and it's not just one parasite because you can have multiple parasites, by different beings that, for an example, I've noticed, of course, we talk about fasting. I end up doing a live on fasting. But from personal experience with fasting is I realize how much I don't need certain things. And by the less that I put inside of my body. And the more that we put inside of our body, the less we are, for an example, connected to our breath. So when like you're fasting, you then realize I could breathe clearly. So I guess the point I'm trying to get to is the less parasites that you have in your body, because there is a way to get rid of them, and we'll talk about that later, is the more you start to become fully yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, the more that you inhabit your body, the less that you can you're not leaving up space for a parasite to fully form and fully develop like that. Because I mean, you can get a parasite from just a doorknob or a car door, or a bunch of little things, in little ways you can get parasites. So not, I don't want to say a constant battle. It's just something that you got to be conscious of, and with your internal hygiene, and just with just being conscious of where your hands have been, and just the way interact with the world is going to determine the different parasites that you pick up. So when it comes to parasites and parasite cleansing and everything like that, it's really, again, you're not going to be able to get rid of all the microbes, because they're microbes. You can get them just from going into a room and inhaling the air in that room. You're going to get some type of flow of microbes. If you got rid of all the microbes, it'd be kind of like getting rid of all of the humans on Earth, in a sense. Like, if all the microbes died, then all the people will be gone, because it's like a lot of the people represent the microbes. So it's just like the flowing through. The parasites, the thoughts, and everything, they're gonna flow through. It's just like what you identify with. And yeah, the more that you are in touch with your breath, then the more you're gonna be in touch with your thoughts, and your thoughts can fully process, and then you can begin to process the traumas and the unprocessed emotions and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of people will get to that point. They get to a certain point and then stop the processing, because it gets really uncomfortable. Because I don't know if you've ever seen that meme, and it's like a guy with a Coca-Cola bottle, and then he has a handful of Skittles, and he's like, basically like people that are afraid of their own thoughts. It's like psychedelics, and the Coca-Cola bottle is like the people that are afraid of their own thoughts. And it's just like so much attachment to the thought, so much identity surrounding thought, that that's where I guess the battle is as far as identifying with thought. And when it comes to the English language, it's so much parasitic. Like, the structure of the language is so parasitic that where it's easy to get caught up in things. Like, people they say I'm sick. It's like saying I am cancer, I'm diabetes. People say I'm mad, which is like saying I am anger. It doesn't really make sense. So you got to realize the structure of your thoughts, and then you can walk it back a little further, like, to where you get to the point where you realize, like, I'm not my thoughts, I'm just processing them. These thoughts are just coming through me based on the rate of my breathing and the quality of breath.
That's pretty deep, because going off of that, like what you just said right there, is understanding, right, and recognizing the thoughts that come through you, but it's about not acting on every single one. It's about understanding which one is yours, and then weaving out the ones that are not. For an example, I heard someone once was talking about how they were cleansing themselves of these parasites, going through a fast, juicing, cleansing, and all that. And and I'm just throwing this out there because I don't remember exactly what it was, but I believe it was like peanut butter or something like that they were really, really attached to for a time. And then when they started weaving out the parasites, they were like, I have no attraction to this at all. Like, I don't know why I was ever eating it or consuming it. And so it could have been the parasites that were in them internally that is what was feasting off of that peanut butter, and not the real them, not that, because I think at the end of the day, we should all know that anything that is natural is what we are genuinely attracted to. And we find that out when we start to cleanse. So when it comes to these certain, I guess you could say maybe it'd be sweets or certain types of foods and stuff that we eat, is that, in your opinion, could that be due to parasites that are inside of us? And it could be for years, many years, that have been inside of us, but internally.
Yeah, no, the parasite, I mean, it's basically shadowing you. And if you've had, like, massive traumas like circumcision and vaccines when you were a child, things like that, those are massive traumas to an infant. And that can create pretty much an out-of-body experience, because your consciousness is kind of protecting you from the trauma. So you're being separated from your physical self, from your body. So the parasite has an avenue to come in there and, basically build set up shop and have a house in you. And it's just monitoring everything you do. It's kind of just like an artificial intelligence within you. Like, you're the true intelligence. It's the artificial intelligence that's monitoring you, shadowing everything about you. And then you need to know more about yourself than it does. And it's difficult because, yeah, it's a huge process, man, as far as that, like really getting in touch with yourself. You got to know the likeness of yourself to know the likeness of, like, I guess, thoughts that aren't malevolent. I mean, really, you're not thought, and so it's like more so thought is like a transient expression of consciousness. It's like if you scan your head across the room and you bring your consciousness across the room, then thought is going to follow that. It's just a transient expression. It's the echo of consciousness. So if yeah, like with a lot of people that the parasite has taken over so much territory within them, yeah, it's got enough of the control of, like, it's got so many cells hypnotized that it's basically animating the body, and it's going to seek anything that feeds it and that doesn't satiate you. So if, like you said, things that you are naturally attracted to will be the things that naturally satiate you. Anything that will make you want to have repeat behavior of continually eating this thing, or continually having this thing, continually having this sex, or continually doing things in a certain way, is most likely parasitic behavior, because it's a loop and you're not getting satisfied. You're constantly repeating the thing based on basically psychosis. You have this idea of satisfaction that is never really reached, because you're eating things that will never satisfy you. Like, so if you eat peanut butter or whatever, you're going to get dehydrated, you're going to have bloating, and so then your body's going to be really hungry. So you eat something that's making you hungry, basically. So it's like a never-ending cycle. You're eating things that make you hungry, and that's most people, eating things that make them hungry, and then they continue to be hungry, and then they get convinced that how much they really need food. And it's true at some level, because the body is not housing just them at that point. So the parasite, for it to exist, it has a need to fuel it, So as far as its fuel, like, and your fuel, it's going to be kind of like a shared thing. Like, whatever you need plus whatever the parasite needs is for that body to continue on at that state of balance or imbalance. It is true that they need these things, like a lot of people that have been controlled by parasites for decades, if they were to stop, they will have such a bad detox, and some people might even die if they're really late in the game, because the parasite is supporting so much of their processes that if they cut the parasite off and stop feeding it, their body's just going to kind of seize up, in a sense. They're not going to be able to process life, because so many responsibilities have been given up to the parasite. And it's always attached to, some type of persona. There's always like an idea of oneself, which isn't the self. It's the idea, it's the concept. So whatever feeds that, other people, the job title, different foods, different things that don't really satisfy your experience in human form, those are the things that feed the parasite, because they keep you wanting, they keep you lacking. You work a job that you hate, you're with someone that you lust in an unhealthy way, to where you never stop lusting them, or because you don't really like them, you don't really connect with them truly, so you can continually have sex with them inappropriately, or you can continue to eat this thing inappropriately, because you've convinced yourself that you need to work this job to get to some other goal that is attached to whatever that identity is, whatever that value system is. It's really not the true self, and people are afraid to let all that stuff go. So when it comes to fasting, it's like more so letting that stuff go, and then the eating just follows. But it's a process, man.
I think what you just said probably hit a lot of people, and maybe not a lot of people on the slide, but it will when they see it, because that is something that probably doesn't get addressed too much. Is we talked about attraction to natural things. Of course, the more that you cleanse and clear your mind and your body, but on the other side of that is when your body is not cleared and your mind is not cleared, you have an attraction to those things that are not normal or that are not healthy. And also that is people. And so it's kind of like you said, of having that repetitive loop of, you know, and we can talk about this on a more surface level, where you have dudes going back to their baby mamas going back to their dudes, that toxicity. And, you know, could we, I guess, relate the parasitic behavior to that as well, to that form of behavior?
Yeah, the parasite is acting through both the bodies. It's not like it's just one person with the parasite. Both of them have the parasite. It's not separate, you know? It's like if you connect from yourself to someone else's self, then there's just oneness and there's really no separation. But if you connect from some parasite persona to someone else's parasitic persona that's really unstable and not in symbiosis with life itself, then you're connecting from a parasite that's within both of you. It's not like two entities. It's one entity that's got control of both of the bodies, that's feeding off of both of the bodies and bringing them together to feed off of both of them. And that's the thing, is that people, it's like you got to discern what you need and what you want, you know, because wanting is unlimited and need is actually a really finite thing and really specific thing. So like, you know, 9 times out of 10, if you're hungry, you're probably just thirsty, or you're just not breathing correctly, or your circulation is just poor. You know, it's usually not that you rarely need something. You usually need to stop something more than what you need to take in.
I know that's true, because I'm telling you, man, after doing, you know, fast for a while, it's always, you know, if I do go back to eating to some degree, I get stuck in that kind of loop, you know, that cycle. But then when I remove myself from it, I'm just like, dude, what the hell was I even eating for? Because I'm like, it's just so unnecessary. And you don't ever get to that point until you actually remove that part of your life and you see how much time you have on your hands and all this. And so kind of relating that to like the parasite form is the fact that I realize that it's never me that wants that. You know, it's never me that needs that. There's something that's, you know, those cravings and all that are there. And it could be, and I'm not even just talking about food. It could be craving for food. It could be craving for sex. It could be craving for a certain activity. Whatever the case is, when you start to remove all of this, you start to find out what it is that you actually need. And so there was a couple of comments at the bottom of my pen. So this particular one says that parasites are a bit more ancient than humans, which I would like you to also touch on, because I know that that's a fact. But also there was a comment that said that we are a parasite to the earth. And in a sense, you know, I agree with that. So what do you have to say about those two comments?
And it's, you know, again, it's like kind of like at some level you look at everything like everything's true. At some level you got to find the truth in everything. But I look at it like, as far as if you communicate that to me, I'm looking at it like, I'm taking it in the sense that, yeah, humanity is a thing that is a subspecies of original man. So original man is, you know, part of nature, or is nature. And then you have humans, which is a subspecies which was created kind of to destroy man. And so, yeah, in a sense, yeah, parasites had to infect man to make man create humans. Because humans are not the same thing as original man. And when I say man, I don't mean just like people with penises. I mean like man and woman, original man and woman. Like you say elephant, you don't say man elephant or female elephant. You just say it's all elephant. You know, so it's the same thing kind of with man, original man and woman. They were, you know, the aboriginals of the earth. A parasite infected them somehow, and then that original man created grafts. And that's what humans are, is a subspecies of man. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, parasites definitely are older than humans, because humans are not the original. And, yeah, so I definitely feel like that's the truth. I feel like, yeah, you got to, for it to be in symbiosis, I think maybe the Georgia Guidestones might be true, too, that you can have the natural man here, natural people should be here, and then you can have maybe 500 million unnatural people here that can be constantly, I guess, realizing themselves and I guess you could say graduating into reality, and from being a graft. So yeah, as far as that is concerned, yeah, I feel like yeah, for most people, most humans, they are a parasite on the earth, and yeah, it's just like anything that was created, kind of like irrespective to nature, you know, like whether it be house pets or whatever it is, it's like it's just not in symbiosis with the nature of things. So it's if you have a mass amount of them, then it's just so much resources being drawn and given to this thing that's kind of like a monstrosity, and pulling resources that could be used in another way to keep life in harmony. So I feel like every statement has some truth to it. So I definitely feel like it's truth to it. I would say live water. So I mean coconut water, but the only thing that's pure water is distilled water. Everything, if it's alkaline water, there's something else in it. So if you're drinking spring water and waters like that, then it's not just water; it's water plus something else. And then so I would say the alkaline water, best alkaline water to drink would be coconut water because it's living minerals. It's not inert minerals. You know, like it's already in living form. It's more already like congruent with the blood, as opposed to something that's dead, and then it's just gonna build up sediment in your joints. And then acidic water obviously is gonna leach at some level. And so I would definitely say living water. So like distilled water plus lemon, or distilled water plus some type of little bit of fruit juice in it, like a small amount though, like drops, just to make it alkaline where it's living. That would, and to where it's not too sweet, because yeah, everything is kind of, we're under attack in every way, not just, you know, just the carbs and the meat and everything. The fruits have been homogenized and changed as well. The cultivars and everything, they don't even look like how they would naturally look. They don't have the water to sugar fiber ratio is all thrown off, because it's about selling people this thing and making them addicted, and so that they can fiend for it. So if you were to have natural fruits, you would need less of them. It wouldn't be as sweet. It wouldn't be so much sugar compared to fiber. There's so much more fructose compared to the fiber in most of the fruits today, because they've been designed that way through supposedly natural selection, through people artificially manipulating the genetics of the plants to where they attack our senses in every way. So I mean, if you could take small amounts of fruit juices and put them into the water, then you're making the water more alkaline and or alkalizing, to where it's not making you not spiking your blood sugar so much to where you constantly have a crash. Because the more fructose you have, the more fiber you're going to need, or you're just going to keep crashing, because you're having so much sugar released into your blood that you're just going to spike and then crash, spike and then crash, and then you just desire more, desire more, desire more. Whereas if you were to have small amounts of sugar, then you're going to have less of a crash and you need less fiber.
Another question was asking if pasteurized coconut water is drinkable, and also do you have to drink straight out of the coconut?
Preferably if you could, but I mean, most of the coconut waters in the Tetra packs are from the older coconuts. They're not from the young ones, so it's already a lower sugar content. So, because I know a lot of people can't afford coconut water, but if you're drinking them out of the Tetra packs, it's usually the older coconuts that don't have much sugar in them anyway. So, I mean, because pasteurization does heat up the sugars and concentrates them more, but if it's the older coconuts, it's less sugar than it would be. I mean, I like the Latin American coconuts more than the Thai ones as far as the sugar content, because the Thai ones are just going to make you want more and more and more. But if you just have Mexican coconuts, then brown coconuts or white coconuts, if you have those coconuts, then you'll be satiated a lot faster. And it doesn't taste, it tastes like slightly sweet. It doesn't just taste like, you know, super sweet young Thai coconuts do.
Yeah, I think that'll also go into what can rid your body of parasites. The more natural you go, and that was going to go into my question too, was because, you know, I was going to ask, at least in your opinion, are parasites natural or unnatural to not just your body, but I guess we would just say in general?
Parasites are going to manifest when, like, they're going to manifest whenever you do things out of alignment. And I would say that every culture is going to have some type of parasite, you know, whether it's a jungle or a city or a musical culture. There's always going to be some type of parasite and some type of parasite-producer relationship in that situation. But it's more so just about where its place is. You know, if people are aware of them, then they're only gonna eat what is already dead, what's already been thrown away. Like, you look at something that was created in a culture, say like, you know, the rap culture, and then when the parasites get a hold of it, it's usually already dead by that point. So it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like when a tumor isn't cancerous, it's benign. It's more so like benign. Like when the parasites take something from the culture and then they repeat it and then they have it, they wear the clothes, they stuff like that. At that point, it's already been choked and killed and murdered by the people that created it. They're already moving on to the next thing. So it's like, fine, you can have it. It's dead. We already did that, so you can have that. So I feel like at that point, then it's kind of like whatever. It's not. It's kind of like their place in a sense. Like when something needs to be composted and completely killed, you give it, the parasites eat it, and then it's over. You know, it's over for that, and now it's on to the next thing, and then the next thing's being created. I feel like, you know, the parasites have their place in that way, in the sense that things that are dying or that need to be converted back into shit so that they can be fertilizer for life, they play that role. So I don't, you know, it definitely has a role, or it wouldn't exist.
How parasites come to be, right? Like, how do we know we have them, things like that. I was like, well, I'll just give you kind of like a simple analogy. I'm like, if you were to leave, like, you know, a slab of meat outside on the lawn, eventually you're going to start to see maggots and all this stuff coming out. And it's because they love dead flesh. And a lot of people are walking around and might as well be considered zombies, dead flesh, whether it be from the lack of thought, right? There's so many different factors to it, but you are basically like a walking zombie. And a lot of people are probably not aware of having parasites, what the signs of having parasites are, any of that. And so can you talk about the different kinds of parasites? You know, that these are living beings inside of your body. There's people who have been who've undergone surgery to get these things out, right? I mean, they are infested with these worms, these parasites and stuff in their body. Do you know of some of the ones that they actually are? You know, we have tapeworms, those type of stuff as well that exist.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Inception, when Leonardo, the opening scene, I think Leonardo DiCaprio's talking to a Japanese guy, and he's like, "What's the most resilient parasite?" And he's like, "Is it a tapeworm? Is it, you know, is it an amoeba or whatever?" And he's like, "It's an idea, you know." And he's like, "A fully formed idea." He's like, "That's stuck." He's like, "That's the strongest parasite." So people, I mean, that's where they're stemming from, is from some sort of idea, some sort of thought, some sort of identification system that is not in alignment with the true likeness of the creator within. So that's where they originate from. And then you have the different levels of minions, I guess you could say, um, just like you have different levels of demons on Earth, you know. Um, Externally, you know, there's so many different ways we can go about this. But internally, yeah, you got, mainly I feel like it's just Candida. The fungus is the main one. I feel like that's the main one, and the bigger they go, the less stealthy they are, and the more that you can identify them. And then they're kind of more clumsy, and they're just like the dumb grunts, the pawns, when it comes to like a lot of the worms and like pinworms and stuff like that. A lot of the worms and things like that are more so, they're not as stealthy. They're more obvious. You can tell, like, soon as you change your diet a little bit, you can tell when you've got worms, when you got some type of worm situation that is overgrowth, and when you can tell when you got a tapeworm situation. But Candida is the slickest. Candida, I feel like, is the slickest of all of them. And if you look at any fungus or Candida underneath microscope, it lives in colonies. You know, parasites live in colonies in general, and the world has been colonized. So we have our external, colonized. We have our external expression of the colonization, making the world a big shitter. That external expression will be the demons or the daemons, the deities of the moon, the day moons. So parasites in general, they operate kind of off of the moon cycle. You have your inception happening usually during the new moons in the darkness. You have some sort of thought being incepted every month, some sort of compounding thought, because it's usually just some type of false identity that was created to shield the essence early on, like if it was vaccines or circumcision or whatever. Something happened, some type of trauma happened, maybe we just get bullied as a kid, whatever it is. Some type of persona happened or was manifested because to shield the essence as like a protection. Like it's kind of like what personality is. It's like a shield. So like that was there, and the parasite basically hijacks that persona or that shield and abuses it, and that's like the original false identity. And then month after month, moon after moon, you have compounding thoughts that basically solidify the identity over years and years and years. So then every month you got this implantation or this amplification of that false identity, to where now by every full moon there's some sort of blossoming of the parasites where they take over more territory, and they inch by inch gradually take over more ground in the body. So it's like inception, they plant their seeds, they have because you eat things that create mucus, the mucus dries, that creates plaque, the parasites lay their eggs in plaque, the eggs hatch every full moon. So then they grow up and then they take over some territory, and they're like, you have ones that are like mini queens in a sense, where you have one in the liver, one in the heart, one in the colon, one all over one in the brain, and they have their little minions, their little drones that they go and colonize an area, and then every full moon their little seedlings hatch, and then now they're taking over more territory, and then you basically got little generals all over the body that move in unison like a hive mind with the one queen. And that's kind of like the different levels, just like in the military, how you got like Rangers, Navy SEALs, you got your typical grunts, you got your everything, your different levels, in your Air Force, you pilots and everything, you got mechanics. Same thing with parasites, because it's just a reflection. The internal and external is just reflections. So it's the same thing, like the government, the external government is just reflecting the internal government. So you have your natural hierarchy within the body. You could look at it so many different ways. Like the pineal gland is the heart eye. And so you could say, if you're really operating from, your core, your heart, your the cortisone, if you're operating from that, then, your hierarchy is in place. Or if you want to even call it a hierarchy, if there's just order, balance, or, continuity of the original pattern or original arrangement of things. So if that's being respected, then the parasites have to respect that. But if that's not being respected, then they just manifest and replicate that dysfunction, whatever dysfunction is going on inside of you. So if you have a false identity, something that was created, that was spawned off of some event, then that parasite is constantly feeding that to you and all the triggers that come with that. And so people don't want to ever remember that. So that they're constantly doing things to block that. So you're just constantly being psychically attacked because it knows all your memories, and it's just constantly feeding them into your conscious mind. So like if you get a moment of clarity, or a point where you have to choose whether to go in a parasitic direction or into symbiosis back to yourself, then the parasite is just going to constantly feed you these thoughts of like, oh, you're a failure, and it's trying to isolate you from yourself in every way. Do whatever it can to distract you from yourself, whether it's physically isolating you or physically isolating you by immersing you in a bunch of people that aren't themselves. It's driving you to be in that space, so where that's all that's resonating around you, so you're just constantly being reminded of the not self instead of the self. And then it's just easier to stay hijacked because it's just picking up steam. The identity is constantly picking up steam.
It's like it's creating a false identity within your own body, in a sense.
Yeah, I think it's called serotonia tumors. Uh, you can look up tumors that grow hair, teeth, and eyes.
Wow.
There's tumors that, yeah, you could Google tumors with teeth or tumors with eyes or hair. It's like anything parasitic is just not, there's no balance, you know, so it's no order. So, you know, you're picking the tongue over the digestive organs. Like, I just want it to taste good. It's all about entertainment. It's not about nutritional value. It's entertainment value. So that's just out. There's no order in that. There's no balance in that. So one area is getting abused. The whole body is basically being focused on one area, and it's the same thing. Like, it's like a tumor manifesting, and it's keeping the blood in a certain area of the body to where it can have all the power, all the consciousness, and all, you know. So that's basically what blood is liquid consciousness. So it's bringing all the blood into one area to where it can have all the power, and it basically usurps the true identity. It's like a coup d'etat within the body. You know, it's taken over to where it is now forming a literal physical false self within the physical body. So you look at like serotonia tumors, there's this other thing being created with hair and teeth and sometimes nails, eyes, eyelashes, and everything. It's just another the false self is actually physically forming within the body, and that's what cancer is. That's what tumors are. That's what cysts are. All of that, you know, it's just, they're kind of one and the same thing. Like when Sebi says there's only one disease, it's mucus. It's just mucus turning into plaque, creating a nest for the parasites, which creates a cyst, which manifests and eventually into a tumor, which eventually turns into a serotonia tumor, which is just this false self physically forming, because the thought is physical at some level.
Kind of like how the body is a form and the mind is formless. So, you know, the body is what gives us the form and all that, you know, that we operate on this earth or in this realm, whatever we want to call it. And just the idea, though, that, you know, you don't have control over your own body because of these other beings that can dictate what you eat, what you watch, like anything that you consume, music and all this stuff, should scare some people, because it should be eye-opening to the fact that you need to be present in your body more than we are. A lot of people are on autopilot every day, right? I mean, they're going out, they're working jobs, they're going to school, they're doing, and this is all just without even really thinking. They just have this routine that's constant. And then to be able to ask yourself, like, is this even like, you know, me that's deciding to do this? And that's probably, I think, one of the scariest things, I think, is just to be, I think it was actually you who said this in a video a long time ago. You had said something that's always stuck with me, though, to this day, was the fact that the only place you've ever been has been your body. That's it. You went to Paris, but you went to Paris operating a body, a vehicle, right? Whatever the case may be. It's the only place you've ever been in. And so to have that idea that yeah, you could be literally having these thoughts and doing these actions and activities that are not your own should be eye-opening to a lot of people, to become more themselves, to be more present in your body, because if you're not operating your body, then what or who is? Your analogy of the movie Inception, of when he says, or what like parasite, right, is an idea. And to bring this a little bit internal to external is what we're seeing now, right? I mean, we know that when we go into the political aspect of stuff and what the deep state or whatever you want to call these people are doing, they plant these ideas in people's heads. And I guess you can use that same terminology and just place it with parasite, right? It's like they're placing literally parasitic thoughts into your mind, into your actions and activities and all this, you know, every day. And fear is one of the things that we see a lot being used for the tactic, right? And so if you have let's say, a parasite, and it literally, I mean, you know, people have anxiety, people have all these certain different things. Do you see that from what that stuff that they put in and put out there and affect the mind just from the stuff that they do, like an outsourced toxicity parasite can infect you internally while having parasites? Is there a correlation there with that?
Yeah, man. I mean, it again is like demonic possession or demonic possession, man. It's really such a it's like it takes a drone to make a drone. You know, people that would that feel like they were possessed by the idea of making a drone that could do something for them. There's so many layers to that. You know, it's starting off. It's starting off internally, like you're already a drone, then you make a drone. It's like because the creator isn't separate from the creation in a sense. So you have parasite, like a parasite that you look at any parasite life cycle, it's always in a loop, right? So like you got the parasites gradually using that loop to jump to a greater being. So the parasite starts off as a small thing, small vessel, then it gets into like a cricket or a caterpillar, then the bird eats it, then it's in the bird. And you know, then it's like that movie with Denzel. I forget that movie when the parasite's just jumping from different levels of human to other
Fallen.
levels of human. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, fallen. Where like they
Yeah,
touch them or something.
yeah. The
Yeah.
parasite's just jumping. The parasite's constantly trying to jump to another level. So you know, it's created a bunch of vessels, man. It's kind of like the Matrix shit when Agent Smith is coming through all of the different people. It's because they're all Agent Smith. They're all an extension of one parasite. There's not really two parasites in that sense. It's kind of just like one, you know, not, you know, you could definitely dissect one parasite from the next, but I'm just saying like they operate in a hive mind. They operate like that to where you have a possessed human creates parasitic offspring either through controlled rape, which is basically misaligned sex, you know, when people just have sex for entertainment or for pleasure rather than like the holistic thing. That's controlled rape. Then you have like actual rape, like what Genghis Khan did, and like 800 million people come from Genghis Khan. So like all these people are extensions of this one parasite that raped its way into somebody's body, and then the body created these offspring. Then those offspring create offspring that have parasites that are extensions. Then they create these inventions or these crutches. Basically, it's not really an invention; it's like a crutch, whether it be the internet or be a drone or whatever it is. It's like these are all crutches, but are supposedly inventions now. And yeah, then you have television. You know, then you have the propaganda machine. It's all an extension of this parasite, you know, in a sense. So you can look at it like that, like there was this initial parasite that manifested and took over until it started to basically surround the host and from the inside out. It took over inside, then it took over outside, and now it's just like total hypnosis, total psychosis, and generation after generation, the physical body's getting further from the true self. You know, like say if you got a parasite and you're mostly yourself, like 90% yourself, to put it in percentage. Then you have a kid, and then your kid's like 80% his self, and then you keep like reproducing from a broken template. So then there's like a dilution happens to where the self is like more and more buried within the body, and basically you can look at it like the body's just on autopilot, and the autopilot is the parasite. It's like as soon as you give up responsibility in your life, the parasite takes over. It's like not even doesn't wait a second. So it's like as soon as you give up responsibility in some area, some hour of the day, whatever it is, the parasite now inhabits that hour, and now it's trying to get 2 hours, and then it's trying to get 4 hours, then it gets all 24 hours of your day. You're a parasite, and even in your dreams, and then you're dreaming, and then the parasite is driving your blood into, you know, your digestion. A lot of people eat or smoke before they go to sleep, so the blood is in those areas. It's not really in the brain or the heart like it could be. So it's so much blood all in like not, it's not, the circulation is just poor. So now you're going into a dream where like the throne is just left open. The pineal is just left open. So your body is just now going into a trance that's being controlled by a parasite. So the parasite is just going inside of you. It's like the movie The Dream Catcher. When the guy was when the parasite was trying to go into there's like a library of his memories. He was trying to go to the guy's library of memories so he can access these things, so he could use it against the body. So your parasite's constantly projecting this hideous memory. It might not even be from this lifetime, constantly projecting it into the brain because it's still within your being. Like if you take a cassette tape and then you dub over it and dub over it and dub over it and dub over it, the original is still there underneath it all. And you can look at it like lifetimes are like that. Like your life, your cassette tape, all your lifelines are keeps getting dubbed over. You keep getting wiped, and you keep recording over top of the old recording, but the original is still underneath it all. So when you go to sleep and you dream or whatever, and you're in a trance, all of that is still accessible by you or the parasite. So the parasite is constantly conjuring that back up and feeding those same memories into your trance. So now you're constantly revisiting a trauma and repeatedly going through it. And then now you're trying to block it, and you wake up hungry and drained, so you eat or whatever, and then you feed the parasite that way, and then it continues to take over more ground, and then you go to sleep again, and then it feeds them same memories to your brain, and then you're not dreaming. It's like in that one Hugh Jackman movie when they were talking about like living in the past or living in the future or whatever, and it was saying like you don't want to be too satisfied, because then you would never dream more, you would never create more, you never create anything new. So if you're constantly getting fed the same dream, same memories, and all your dreams are memories, it's just like in Inception when he was like, never make a dream off of a memory. I don't know if you remember, he was talking to the chick when he was training her how to be an architect.
Yep.
He was like, never ever make a maze or make a dream from a memory, because then you'll lose touch with what's a dream and what's reality.
Real.
So that's what's happening, to where the parasite is constantly feeding those memories to your body, to your being, to where you're not dreaming, you're not creating new, you're not manifesting or creating new experiences for you to grow and move forward and to get out of the loop. So you just stay creating the same memories, lifetime after lifetime.
I'm glad you brought up like loop again though, because I was gonna say it just made me think of like serial killers or killing, right? Where it's just like you have a Jeffrey Dahmer who did things completely different than like a John Wayne Gacy did, but the whole conclusion is the fact that they murdered people, that they killed people. And it's like that thought is there. As long as that thought is there, it's always going to be, that an outcome. And that's kind of like, I think what I tell people about wars and stuff, right? Like things will happen. They'll be like, hey, there was a bombing in Syria. And then people will be like, well, it wasn't here. It's not close to home. But it's like, look, if it is a thought somewhere, then it can happen anywhere. The whole point is that it can happen. And so I feel like, just going off of some of the stuff you're saying, that when it comes to like this hive mind, that if the thought is there, or if this is within this parasite, that the same thing is always going to happen within a loop. We kind of talked about this a little bit in the pale horse video that we did, but do you think there's some basis to like, will you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like almost like a checkpoint. Like once you encounter the thought and interface with the thought and fully think it out, it's kind of like a checkpoint part. If you live out 70 years and you got the same memory loop, then you reach this point of like, I don't know, whatever different stages. You're 12 years old and you reach this thought like, maybe gravity is just density, or whatever it is. Maybe this is that. Maybe this is that. You reach in these, interfacing with these thoughts and different points. It's like a different, because the thoughts are kind of like road maps or signs on a map or signs on a road, where they're leading you to either being conscious or more distracted or more delusional. So the thought isn't the identity, it's just a sign. So yeah, if you're in this loop, then you're going to come back to, it's a circle. So you're going to come back to the same point where you hit this thought, and then you have an opportunity to go left or go right or whatever, go straight, whatever, however you look at it in your quantum view. But yeah, it's like, it's still, as long as you're in that loop, the thought is going to be on that course.
So it's almost like a symptom. It's like a symptom. Like if you were to think, like, damn, I want to murder this person, right? And it's like, that's not your thought. That is a thought that is attached to this other thing, whatever we want to call it. Like, is there some truth to that?
Yeah, I mean, anything that's not in the likeness of the
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 creator.
originator or the
Yeah.
creator within you. Yeah. Anything that's because you gotta look at thoughts like you know, objectively anyway. You gotta look at it like, man, this is something that is flowing through me. It's not what I am. You know, it's not. You know, it's this. That's how you have to look at it. You have to discern that. You know, and the only way I feel like you can really see that is to you know, get in touch with your breath to where the thoughts come and go, and then there's no real attachment to it because then you realize like, man, as I breathe, this thought comes, it fully blossoms, I fully hear it. Now I'm breathing and it's just getting further, fading further in the back, and now the next thought comes, and then I can fully think the thought through, and then the next thought, and then you go through processing like that, and then you eventually because you're going to go through a bunch of things. I feel like with breath work too. At first it's going to be emotional. First, you'll be tired, I guess. A lot of people will go through yawning and stuff. Then you'll go through the part where you're emotional. Either you're angry because you're sad and afraid, really, so it comes out as anger, or you really just the fear is really right in the forefront of your consciousness, and then you're going through the breath work. It's just blind, it's just a blind pain basically that's happening. So then you're doing your breath work until you get to the bottom of it. Then you reach like, oh, all of what I just went through for the last 30 days of breath work brought me to this thought, and it was all just stemming from that thought. And this thought was so buried underneath, it's almost like underwater. When you talk underwater, it's like it's so warm because it's like it's just more. You can look at emotion like it's thick thought, so it's just so dense. So you're just working through all of that attachment that the emotions, because the thought has now snowballed into an emotion. So you're working through that until where you get to just the thought itself. And now it's just like, oh man, I was attached to this thought or this idea. Now I have the choice of, you know, either repeating. It's really impossible once you realize, but either you can, you know, suppress and repeat, or you can keep breathing and then go through the next process where, you know, you kind of go through waves of it, where now you've got through that thought. Now your breath work you feel great through the process, and then you reach a peak, you climax, and then now it's, you know, you're going through a bunch of blind pain again, and it's coming through as fear or anger or anxiety, which is just blind pain really. So you're working through that with the breath, and the more that you do that, it becomes obvious, like, man, I'm not my thoughts, you know, I'm just experiencing them.
How some of this was explained to me and how I understood a lot of it was that, you know, once again, our mind or our consciousness doesn't have a form. It's formless. Let's put it that way. It's outside of form, and our physical body is something that is a form. Like we have a form. We're experiencing life through this body, and that the breath is what's in between the two. You know, that's what connects us from the form to the formless, to our consciousness, to the mind, and all of that. And that the idea and the thought is what can create something in form. So for an example, if I wanted to make a broom, all I needed was a stick, you know what I mean? Or a rake or something. Like all I needed was a stick and some stuff to make a rake, you know, some sticks or whatever. And like, it's the thought is there, which then can create the form. And what it seems like what's happening to a lot of people when it comes to parasites and having the actual physical worms in their body is the thought, the negative thoughts, the toxic foods, all of this types of things that are creating the parasites in a form. Hopefully that makes sense. You know, like I said, I want to keep it parasites for dummies to some degree, because like you said, there's a lot of layers to it. So we have the physical aspect and we have the non-physical aspect of it all. And when you have the physical parasites, those things, I want to get into how to actually get rid of them, because there's people who are probably not on the best diets. There's people who are probably not as self-conscious as to, like how you were saying, like you could touch a doorknob and get a parasite. There is no escaping the fact that you are susceptible to getting things, germs, whatever you want to call them. So what are some of the ways to get rid of the physical parasites and also the non-physical parasites? And when we say non-physical, we can talk about those thoughts that we were talking about as well.
Yeah, so you know, like you said, the breath is like the vehicle of consciousness. It's like the carrier of the consciousness. You know, you could say it, you could look at it like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or whatever. And the Spirit is what really the body is just like dense breath. in a sense. So like as the breath congeals, it's or concentrates. You know, you can look at it like that. As you peer through, a persona is peering through, or a person is it means to peer through, to look through sound or whatever. The body is just dense. It's just dense vibration. So the breath is, I guess, more immaterial or less material, however you want to look at it, and it's just the carrier of the Father or of the consciousness. And the Son or whatever, I guess you could say, is the body itself. And the spirit is actually feminine. So the spirit is more so like, again, like through the spirit comes the Son. The Father and the Spirit bring the Son. So you got basically, I don't want to take away anything from like what the guy was saying, what you were saying, but I look at it like the body is the mind in 3D. I don't really separate those two things. I really feel like, you know, if your body's corrupted, then it's an expression of your mind. If your mind is corrupted, then it's going to express itself in your body. It might take a little while because the body's kind of being dragged by the mind, or however you want to look at it. It's all being dragged by the breath. But it's really just like how much the breath inhabits the body. And then the consciousness is being carried by that breath. So really when you just want the cells to communicate, and communication is breathing. So the less communication between the cells, then the more parasites have a gap or a space between your physical self and your true self, or your metaphysical self. So when it comes to cleansing, you definitely want to get in touch with your breath. So whatever diet you have, you want to start getting in touch with your breath. And then your diet is going to auto-correct, your lifestyle, whatever, what have you, is going to kind of auto-correct the more you get in touch with your breath, and really prioritize the breath before anything, before food or water in the morning, before anything, before, you know, even music maybe. However, just you want to prioritize the breath first, and then that'll massage the organs, because your diaphragm is constantly expanding and contracting, and you're increasing the circulation to where there's communication. And once that communication is established, then you'll be able to consult with your liver and your spleen and your pancreas, and you'll know when you're thinking about eating some food, your liver is going to communicate with the rest of the system like no, or everything's going to communicate like that. So it's more so the breathing. How much are they breathing? But if you're eating mucus-forming foods, then you have this layer or film of mucus that solidifies into calcified plaque that the parasites live in, and then you literally become separated from your physical self. The more that you have these separations or pockets of separation within your body. And to break up the plaque, you could use herbs like plenty of herbs, man. As far as your digestive tract, you know, yellow dot, cascara sagrada, rhubarb root. There's so many digestive herbs you can use. You can use slippery elm. You can use senna leaf. There's so many herbs you can use for just the digestive tract. For the liver, you could use milk thistle, burdock, even red clover. For the kidneys and lungs, you could use astragalus to bang out those, the mucus in those areas, as well as marshmallow. Yeah. Wormwood for short, black walnut for your gallbladder, and it's really just about breaking up that plaque. But you can use these different herbs to help you do it, but the herbs are basically stimulating those areas so that there's some communication being established again, and then you start to, in conjunction with breath work, then you can maintain that communication. And then it becomes obvious what is obstructing, what is an obstruction as far as what you're ingesting. And it's really just circulation. You know, it's really just your blood, keeping your blood as clean as possible, to where the blood is kind of like in TCM, the blood is water. And if you look at water, like they say, water dissolves stone, you know, and you can look at the blood like that too. If the blood is clean, it's like clean water, and it's like just dissolving these calcified areas of you, the stone. So the more that you don't do things that obstruct, and you fast and you breathe correctly, like a baby does from his diaphragm, then the more that the circulation will flow through and dissolve all that calcification, all that rock. And then you can get, like I was saying, you know, the body is the mind in 3D. That, like, telepathy is fine, you know, but you want to get to that point of no mind. You want to get to that point of having no mind, and that's the true identity. Like, Like they say, like the Egyptians call like the hidden god, like the daemon is the body. Some people call the daemon the body. You know, that's the physical self. And then the Amen is or the Amen Ra, or whatever. That's the metaphysical self. So Amen is like the same letters as name. It means like the nameless. So the no name, the part that is ineffable, is the true self. So that's the part that has no mind. So you can communicate telepathically or telekinetically or whatever, but then to communicate with the no mind is really communicating from the self to the self, because there's no separation, there's no space in heaven. Like in the Tao Te Ching, it says, that which has no form can enter where there's no space. So if you reduce your identity through fasting, because fasting is going to show you what's not you and all of what you don't need. So the more that you reduce your identity through these practices, breath work and fasting, intermittent fasting, and changing of the ingredients, the more that you're going to get to the state of having no identity. You're selfless in a sense. The selflessness shows you who yourself is. So you have no identity. You're the nothing.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, but it just made me think about how in politics, you know, they use identity politics a lot, and they talk about unity, which we know the real unity they're talking about is not unity, but how much that does cause a separation of saying I'm this, I'm that, and you know, I'm non-binary, I'm a this, and then I'm a that, and I'm a that, and I'm a this, and it's like that is so much separation and division, because it actually equates no identity. You know, that's why they talk about gender confusion, identity confusion, and all this other stuff. It causes confusion. And going to how you were talking about, like with fasting, and how that removes everything you don't need. I mean, I know that from experience from doing it. I mean, you could figure this out on your second day of fasting. You'd be like, yo, what was I eating for? Like, I didn't have to do it. And I remember in our interview episode with you, you had said, go and say, what is it that I don't need? And then you can feel that, like, you know, you can see and say, okay, like, I could eat, but I don't identify with the hunger because that's not you, right? And I think the closer we get to our true selves, which is not the body, you know, you don't have to eat. You don't have to eat if you're straight a spirit, a soul. That's not how you get your, you know, your energy at all. And that keeps bringing me back to parasites that thrive off of what you do and put and consume in your body. And once again, whether it's music or whatever, there's certain music that these creatures, whatever we want to call, love. There's certain things that you watch and all that. But I would fast and I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to hear this, or I don't want to watch this. I don't want to be around this type of thing or that type of thing. And I would say, I guess, and I want to know if this is something that you agree with, that the number one best thing to do to dissolve parasites from your life, and this is internal or external, is to do the internal work, because we know as above, so below, and inside and out, is too fast to decrease what you are consuming, and then remove the cravings, remove the addictions, remove the food, all that type of stuff that is disconnecting you from your true self, internally and externally. Do you think that should be, I guess, the overall goal for someone who wants to, I would say, reset or restart and remove all of that from inside of them?
Yeah, like the more that you can successfully fast, the more that you're in the moment, the less that you're projecting, and then when you're projecting, you're kind of leaving your body, and then the parasite, the persona, is what's taken over. So then it is hungry. You experience more hunger. So like really, like these three things are the same. Like, knowing, owning, and nowing is all the same sounds. To know yourself is to own yourself, and you're now yourself. So the more that you're in the now, the more that all your cells are in the moment, and they don't have a bunch of cells that aren't on the same accord, that are just in hypnosis, in the psychosis of desire, the more that you can own yourself, the more that you can be in the moment, the more that you can stay in alignment, and then the more that you're just conscious of the breath. And then one breath takes you to the next breath. Like you're like I posted the other day, like your birth and your death are more so fated. And what you do between A to Z is up to you based on your presence and how conscious you are of your breath, really, because the breath is the carrier of consciousness. If you're not breathing anymore, there's no more consciousness. It's just simple as that. If there's no more breath, there's no more consciousness. So the more that you're conscious of your breath, the more that you're in the moment, and the more that you're in your natural movements and in alignment and doing what you're naturally supposed to do, it's impossible to miss the breath. It's literally impossible. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, whether it's like, I don't know, you're knitting and you're a knitting all-star and that's what you do, you're not gonna miss the breath. It's gonna constantly come through, and you're constantly gonna be reminded of it and hit those breath points or those checkpoints where it's just unavoidable to get a full breath in. It's just that there's so much trauma, usually between infancy and adulthood, to where people forget how to breathe. They're breathing so shallow. They're not breathing how they used to breathe as an infant from the diaphragm. Because then when you're a baby, you're more in the now. You're more in the moment. You're more, just that you are the moment. So like, it's no separation in that. And I feel like it's more, the fasting brings you to the breath, or the breath brings you to fasting. It's kind of like no separation, really. So yeah, like you're made of atoms. Atoms they power themselves. They don't need we're naturally autotrophic, but if you're carrying a parasite and a bunch of personas and a bunch of ideas of what should be and not living in what is, then you're going to experience a lot of hunger because you're trying to fuel a concept instead of existing and dwelling in reality. So the atoms are powering themselves in the moment. They're you don't need anything in the moment. There's no pain in the moment. It's just that people are so far from the moment. There's so much trauma between the body and the moment, really, to where they stand in desire, because the desire solidifies the identity. If you say you need something, then that means that something isn't you, so it congeals your identity, because what you aren't defines you. Your desires are basically define you. So people, they're not really attached to the things. They're attached to the desire itself, because it congeals their identity, and they're attached to that identity. So they say, I want this, I want that, because it's the happiness of pursuit. They want to chase the thing because it gives their identity validity. It supports that identity, and then it separates them from themselves, separates them from their body. And the body doesn't stay in the moment. It stays in astral projection. It stays in projection.
Realizing that you have a separation of self when it comes to all of this, it makes you kind of reevaluate what you do from when you wake up to when you go to sleep, and what you're doing within that time frame. And if within that time frame, it's even you making those choices for those things. We went over some of the things, some herbs that you can take, doing breath work and fasting, which can eradicate those over time. And of course, you said that you're never going to fully get rid of them, but when you're actually aware, then you become that much more powerful in your being going forward. And a lot of us probably are not. We're not that up to speed with all of that information. But
you just want to get the adult ones out. You just don't want fully formed parasites. You can have like a bunch of babies that never fully get, attached to a thought that you identify with, and then you continually keep your internal hygiene, clean, to where they can never grow. There's never a place for them to inhabit within you.
Overall, it's that cleanse. Like you were talking about a baby. A baby is not born with parasites. Like parasites aren't just, it is something that becomes accumulated by thought, by actions, and all of this. And, and it's real. I advise people you probably go on YouTube right now. And like we said before, there's the physical aspect of it, which is created by the thought, the food, and all this other stuff you consume. You have worms and more than likely inside of you. If you can look at yourself and say, for people who smoke, maybe people who drink, your actions have caused parasites to some degree, for sure. Whether it's a lot, whether it's a little, whether it's babies, whether they're adults, you more than likely have them, especially if you haven't cleansed. And if you can get rid of the adult ones, then you're good, because just think about it. A baby needs its parents in order to thrive and in order to operate. It can't do anything on its own. So I think when it comes to the eradication of the parasites, that is one of the main goals that you should have, but also that also leads into what we were talking about with the fasting and with the cleansing and the purification of water, drinking distilled water. All this stuff leads to a healthy lifestyle internally, which will lead to it externally. And you won't have to worry about this stuff at all. But for the time being, we have these parasites not only internally, but externally. And once again, like we said, when it comes to the political stuff on the surface,
they almost know that they're parasites, and they know that that's their role at some level.
Yeah.
I feel like they know that they're so severed from reality, and reality being original man and woman, they're so separated from that, whether through bondage, whether through making deals with, like people say, making deals with the devil or whatever, making deals with the matrix, with the illusion. They're so detached or separated from that they feel like, I'll just be a parasite. I know I'm hijacked. It's like you see people accepting awards at award shows, and like they up there with their persona, and it's like the persona is a parasite and a lot of what they produced was from that, and then they're just the body's taking credit for it out of just some vain like, yeah, I did this, but it was a parasite. It wasn't even them doing it. It was the parasite making the whole thing happen. So
not even just that, but look at the whole concept of what these politicians and all the stuff, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, they do. It's literally parasitic behavior. It is when you go back to self, you are you, and you have that individual thought, because these thoughts are not your own. As we said, this is parasitic thoughts and behaviors that what they're doing, they don't even want you to have a thought of your own. It's literally a hive mind. It is something that is internal that has then expressed itself externally. It's like we're literally seeing this now. They do not want a thought that's not theirs. They want everyone to be in a hive mind like state where
and
you
everybody's
can't
thinking
question
in English
anything or nothing.
Yeah, and everybody's thinking in English, and English is the English, and because the fallen angels or the demons created English. That's English. So everybody's thinking in that, so they're manifesting. It's like playing in their arena. You're constantly going to lose. That's why we need to all learn older languages, so you can, because these younger languages don't even really connect with yourself like they could. The older words, some of the remnants are still in it, so you can kind of connect with yourself, but that's why all the dreams are so cryptic, because yourself doesn't even trust the body. And so it's giving you these cryptic-ass dreams, because itself is like, I can't even give you direct messages anymore. You got to decipher this now, because you're carrying this parasite. If I give you these jewels, the parasite's just going to get them. So I can't even tell you about yourself through these dreams now. It's what yourself is communicating to your body. Now I have to give you cryptic dreams now. So yeah, man, it's ridiculous. You look at it like Anderson Cooper. He's the heir of the Vanderbilt dynasty. The Vanderbilts basically are they're just front men for the West India Company, which is the Netherlands, the Netherlands or whatever, because the Queen of the Netherlands is a queen parasite. She's one of the generals. And it just goes up in ranks of parasitism. And so you got Anderson Cooper. When you talk about like a baby some babies are parasites, man. They are themselves parasites. Some have parasites because the parents have parasites. The mom has parasites in her system. It's going to get into the baby. They dream together. It's going to get into them. But so like you definitely have fully embodied parasites now through the selective breeding process or the grafting process, where the parasite's driving you to vanity breed, and after generation to generation of vanity breeding, it's just vanity is unconsciousness. So the more that you breed generations of being vain and breeding from, I'm breeding based on this person's looks, not the contents of this person. I mean, not to say you should just be with ugly people or whatever. I'm just saying, like, true attraction starts from the inside out. So like, if you're being driven by a parasite on a lustful level, on a vain level, you're going to create from a vain level. Generations of that, you're going to have such an unconsciousness that's just going to be inbreeding, whether you know it or not. The host usually doesn't know it. They just think that they love this person, but there is love there, because the parasite can't create anything, can't create connections or nothing. They just abuse the connections that are already established. So the parasite's just driving you to bang your cousin or your sister from 3 lifetimes ago, or your brother's wife from 4 lifetimes ago, whatever, to keep the inbreed. The more that you inbreed, the more that you create an empty vessel, the more that they can fully inhabit it. And then you get Anderson Coopers, people like that, who are major heads in the media. He's just an extension of the Vanderbilt arm, which is an extension of the Queen of the Netherlands and the West India Company. And the further you go back, you're just going back to the Queen Parasite. So
when we talk about bloodlines, I mean, you know, this is, you can't get more parasitic than what these people have done and who they are and what they're involved in.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the Rh negative bloodline is empty vessels. It's just empty vessels. The vessels. That's why they're kept in a place that keeps them where the parasite can control them, in a cold environment, air conditioning, whatever, in places where they shouldn't be, with people they shouldn't be around frequencies they shouldn't be around, so that the parasite can constantly own that body, because it's just an empty rental. It's just an empty body. It's not even really, it's a graft. It's not a natural body. It's just a chimera. It's created from a bunch of pieces of a bunch of bodies, like an amalgamation of a bunch of throwaway, like Frankenstein, his monster or whatever. So it's just an empty vessel that they can get into and they can manipulate the reality through. And if you create a fucking society of chimeric beings, then, you know, you have these cartels, banking cartels, whatever, drug cartels. They're all controlled by chimeras because they're just open vessels. You know, if you were to get them away from those environments and those people, then they have a chance of realizing themselves and, you know, and actually creating unity within themselves. But most of them will never do that, because then that will mean getting rid of those benefits that come with this illusion. So they're never going to do that, because their identity is so tied to those illusions. I see somebody said something about enemas, but I was going to say enemas, man. Enemas definitely. Not all the time, because then it's kind of like reverse bulimia, but definitely enemas definitely help a lot.
My advice to people would be, the number one thing is to cleanse your body. And like I said with fasting, was sometimes it takes people a little bit longer, especially if you haven't done it before. But the second day, normally you're probably like, man, what was I eating for? I didn't need to eat. Sometimes it's the third day. For me, it was like the very first time I did it was my third day. And it's not just about not eating, but it's about removing the things that is not needed. And when you do that, you're able to recognize what is truly you and what isn't. And what is truly you is that you don't need chili cheese fries. You don't need none. I mean, I'm seeing vegan food that's literally junk food, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, why? I'm like, they have tainted what it is to eat healthy, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
And so
it's been totally hijacked, man. It's been totally hijacked.
Right.
Like, you know, to where now that, you know, the representation of it is just, is no way that you can even say vegan anymore. I don't even really say much about food anymore. I really don't. I don't really, because it's like, it's such a hopeless thing, because people's attachments to these things and these false representations, man. It's bad. It really is bad, man.
yeah.
I really wanted to say though, man, you could look at all the this crazy architecture around the world, these castles and stuff, with beautiful architecture. You look at Versailles. You could look at the Palace of Versailles. They didn't have no bathrooms. How do you master architecture and then you didn't create no bathrooms until the 1800s? Or like you look at Chicago. How do you build this city and then you don't have a sewage system until the late 1800s? And that's why you look at all these fires and these earthquakes, supposedly San Francisco fire, Baltimore, Maryland fire, Chicago fire, late 1800s, early 1900s. They were wiping out that old architecture because they never built it, and it would have snitched on the fact that there was an advanced civilization that was living here that did not need bathrooms. They were living off of etheric energy or ethereal energy, and all the buildings connected. All of the buildings had, you know, they were self-heated through the ethereal energy. And you look at all the star forts around the world. There's no way they built them star forts, man. To my 15 million bricks off the coast of Key West was built by donkeys and wooden ships. They brought that out there, really, and they built it in the water. They never did. They never built that stuff, man. All of that stuff was used to harvest energy, is energy generating, just like the churches was part of energy generating.
That eradication of sovereignty and individual thought, and not being able to occupy. I mean, look how many people, when it came to the Jabberoos, that without question went and got that. You know, without question. It was like, were you even acting out of your own volition, or was that not even your thought? You know, I mean, this was planted, and a lot of stuff was planted into people. The mindset, the thought, like we were talking about Inception, which was a very, very good analogy of that. And if you can plant that seed and put that thought in there, then you've just created a form of a parasite. You know, you really have.
Yeah, no, and it's just, you know, that whole thing I really feel like is just part of the reset, man. The queen has reached this threshold where they, you know, you can only, like, if you got these hosts, you don't want to kill the hosts. You know, you're a parasite, you don't want to kill the host. You want the host to make a baby so that you can occupy the baby, so that you can occupy its baby, its baby, its baby, its baby over generations. So then we've reached this point now, you know, where the snake eating its tail has reached pretty much the back of its head. So it's no way that the parasite can continue to eat at the aboriginals. So at this point, it's the reset. So you're letting the aboriginals take back over as you go dormant so that you can come back for the next 1,000 years instead of being completely eradicated. So that's kind of the whole thing with parasites, man. Like, you fast for a few days and then you realize you don't need food. Then you get to day 7 or 8 and then you're like, the cravings might come back, or you might just feel like shit. You don't even want food. You just feel like shit. It's just like getting off a dope. So that's the parasite kind of coming back. As the whole identity attachment, that whole thing is there. You so synchronized with the thoughts and the identity of the parasite, the body is, to where the body is now suffering because it's not feeding off of what it used to feed off of. The parasite was feeding off of people, off of all of these malevolent sources of energy, to where, you know, now that you've broken that cycle and you're not eating for 7, 8 days, now you're going to go through these more intense detox symptoms. So then you might, now your energy got back. You got your energy back. Your organs went back. They stopped being swollen. And now you can breathe completely throughout all your cells, or more completely. So now your energy's back up. So the parasite's like, all right, now I'm going to come back and crop that energy and try to retake over. So and it just keeps doing that. It keeps taking, in a microcosm, that's what's happening, is where the parasite's getting you to eat, you fast for a period, then you succumb, and then it, you know, because you're getting your energy back up, and then now you eat for, I don't know, a month or something, and then you go into another fast or whatever, you get your energy back up, and then it just crops the energy again. It just keeps doing that. So it's like the same thing in a macrocosm, where it's like you got the aboriginals, who are people that are autotrophic. They're not endotrophic. They don't need external light. So they're autotrophic, naturally autotrophic. So now you reach this point where you can no longer eat off of that host, because the host is providing you, a platform to exist. So you can't. There's a threshold that you can't go past, or it's like a fail-safe in life, where everything, this is kind of like a game or a simulation. So once this threshold is reached, there's a reset where we haven't reached critical mass as a population. We haven't fixed the problem. So now the parasite is receding into dormancy, and then people are going to go back into a golden age. We're going to have to go through a crazy collapse first, but then you're going to go into a golden age, and then the parasite still has its hooks in us at a minute level. It's going to come out of that dormancy. So that's what I mean, like the Bible thing, where it says that in Revelations, the beast comes out during Revelations, takes the throne over briefly, then it gets sent back into its hole for 1,000 years, and then it's let back out, and then it creeps back out, takes over the population again, and that's the parasite loop that we're in. I think the Bible just expresses that. They tell pregnant women don't go around cats because the dander in the air, because they got that worm, it could kill the baby.
I do remember that, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just you go up in certain people's houses or in a certain environment, certain workspaces. It's a bunch of people, you know, molting or whatever. They're giving off, they're shedding all of that garbage into the air, and you inhaling that, man. You got to be conscious of it. You got to keep your environment more clean, but you know, new level, new devil. You know, the more clean you get, the more the greater the challenge will be. But it's worth it because you realize yourself to where, you know, yeah, you get beyond the body to where you're like, I don't need this body. It's not about the sensual nature of the body. That's not my identity. I'm doing this for something greater than just sensual pleasures.
Like I said before, is if you go and you look at some of these videos of these actual worms that are sitting inside of people's colons and all these other organs that you don't, you know, you wouldn't expect this stuff to be in. It's disturbing. It's disturbing that, I mean, I remember when I was years ago, I saw there was this bodybuilder or whatever, you know, he's a big dude or whatever, and he kept having like a stomach ache or something was wrong with his stomach. He kept feeling. And so he had ended up going to the doctor. They opened him up, and he just had a whole nest of these worms in his body, man, like in his stomach. And that thing, I had never forgot that. I was just like, yo, like, you know, that was one of the things that made me stop like eating meat and stop eating crazy, period, in general, because it was just for the simple fact that like they love that. They love nesting in a place where it's like it's dead. And how you were talking about where blood is stagnant, like they thrive in these areas. All right. All right, man. That was a very good, successful, and informative live. I feel like we touched on a lot of different stuff, and gonna be a couple of times I feel like you're gonna have to really take a lot of it in and then do a lot of the research yourself too on your own body.
Yeah, once you chop it up, then I know it'll be real nice too. It'll to where because people gotta stay stimulated or they just fall off. So you gotta you gotta chop it up a certain way.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up. Taylor, man, thank you for joining me and doing this with me. There was no other choice but to have you for this.
Yeah, all right then, GION, man. I'm sure we have some more coming, so I guess I'll just keep it brief, man. We already said a lot. Thank you for checking into this live, guys.
We'll see you guys later.